So let's move on to some of the elements of persuasion, because ultimately, as I said in the open, in some ways, these debates are laboratories of persuasive techniques and an ability that you and the audience have to see what does and doesn't work. I know this. I'm going to ask you kind of a Monty Hall, pick door A or door B. I'm sure the answer is it's both. It's door C. But I am curious because if you boil it down, people can try to persuade others through their logic and the quality of their argument. That's more on the side of rhetoric. Or they can use their personal characteristics, charm, charisma, building a personal rapport with members of the audience. And as I say, I'm sure it's some combination of both. I am wondering if you've seen one have more importance than the others over the course of so many debates.
That's hard to sort out. If you don't come in with a pretty strong argument, I don't think charm is going to win it for you without that. But charm is really important. And I'm using charm to mean all kinds of things, like ability to make the audience feel like you're speaking to them, ability for the audience to feel that they can identify with you, your ability to make them laugh, your ability to make them cry. It's the feeling side, it's the non-cerebral side of the debate, and it's really important. And it's not about, we like to call ourselves a test of ideas, and we are, but the debate is actually more than a test of ideas. But I don't think I've ever seen a debater win who didn't really have a strong argument. And the strong argument does seem, at least to our audience, to depend a lot on having some sense of data that goes beyond anecdote, and also having a sense of logic to it. A plus B does equal C. And also to have a defense to have thought through and have a defense against the critiques that are going to come up, which sometimes, by the way, this is part charm and part debate skill and part cerebral, is to concede that the other point has a side, but don't struggle with that. Concede it, move on, try to ignore it. But that's again a debating skill, that it's sidestepping a challenge, which doesn't necessarily again mean you're getting to truth with a capital T, but it can be more persuasive or less persuasive depending on your ability to do that. And one other thing I've seen is that sometimes debaters come in and they have a personal story to tell in combination with an argument, and an argument with some data, some numbers, bigger picture. A personal story, particularly if it comes at the end of the debate, can really be powerful. If it can really pull over the audience, especially those who are wavering, to come to your side. But there are debaters who have come in with nothing more than a personal story or an anecdote or two, and they do disastrously with our audience, because these debates go on for an hour and a half, and all kinds of challenges will come up. And if all you do is keep telling your story and don't really refute the more data-based arguments that are being made on the other side, the audience they might like you, but they start to think you don't really have an argument.
I find it fascinating what you just said about the placement of the story itself is an important factor. And that once you've built the quality of your argument, if you place the story strategically toward the end, in many cases, it may be more effective than leading with that when the audience might have an expectation that you're leading with argument and data first. That's an interesting takeaway. I'm curious in terms of your own booking decisions. I mean, I think in many of these, you mentioned before we started that the latest debate that you recorded was expanding the Supreme Court. So I'd imagine when you are starting to think about who your guests for an episode, like there are some obvious people you might think about because they're the clear experts in the field. But how much are you thinking about not just that they're the guy or the woman or the person, but also that they're able to bring it on a debate stage? In other words,
really
right. So are you looking, the people that you're less familiar with, you're looking at their video and seeing how much physical presence they have on a stage?
Yeah, there's no question is this a person who has something to say that's meaningful and in depth, and does this person say it well, is really, really important to us. And that's a little bit unfair in a certain sense, that they're just going to be people who have something important to say who aren't really that great at being in front of an audience. They might be nervous. They might lose their place. They might lose their confidence being in front of a crowd, and that would be sort of disastrous. But there are places for those kinds of debates in the sort of the pages of the Atlantic and other print organs that will put a side-by-side debate kind of thing together. That you can write it, you can think it through. But the short answer to your question is we sure do check out the vibe of the person, how they speak, how they sound, how confident they are.
I'm curious, and again, I mentioned in the open that I made an incorrect assumption when I attended the debate where there was a Monsanto representative on the stage. But I am guessing there are times when there's a less friendly audience for some of the debaters, depending on what the topic and which side of that topic they're on is. What have you seen debaters do, especially when perhaps the audience isn't on their side from the start, to shrink that gap and maybe bring the audience over to them?
To the sort of the easiest, most successful move for somebody who knows that he's got the audience against them is to acknowledge that fact and to say, that's okay with me. So we did a debate many years ago now where the resolution was George W. Bush is the worst president of the last 50 years. I forget the time period. I think the last 50 years. So we were going back to Kennedy, or maybe to Eisenhower. Get my math right. And one of the debaters was Karl Rove, and Karl Rove was there to defend George W. Bush's legacy. And we held the debate in New York City, and New York City was, notoriously or reputedly not very fond of George W. Bush. And we held the debate in a part of town known as the Upper West Side. And that part of town in particular, I think, would not have been George Bush territory. It would have been Barack Obama territory. I'm sorry.
I pulled the statistics on this. I think in Manhattan, Hillary Clinton beat Donald Trump by 80 points. Joe Biden beat Trump by 70 points. So, you're on pretty firm ground there to say this was not a Karl Rove crowd.
Yeah, and I was mixing up my presidential races. So the second race was against John Kerry. It was would have been a John Kerry crowd. And so Karl Rove gets up and, sort of from the minute I introduce him, I can hear a sort of rumble, and in here to make the argument in support of George W. Bush, here is former presidential advisor Karl Rove. He walks up to the microphone and he looks out and he said something like, the Upper West Side of New York, it's great to be among friends. And the whole place exploded in laughter. I think he might have even gotten a little bit of applause. And he won the debate that night.
Thanks for watching this video clip of the Speak Good podcast. If you'd like to hear the complete episode, please check out your favorite podcast directory and subscribe now. Thanks for watching.